Let's look at another major city in Egypt, Alexandria, on the Mediterranean coast, which has also seen some battles tonight. Heavy turnout in the streets. These are the pictures from earlier on tonight. What we're looking at is the back end of the front line between protesters confronting security forces around the security forces HQ in the city. Well, they've been under relentless tear gas fire, as we've seen over the last 2 or 3 hours. I believe Al Jazeera's Rawiya Ragah joins us now on the phone line from there. In the last live pictures we saw, Rawiya, it looked like the streets had thinned out a little bit. Have things quietened down, or are we not simply able to see what's going on around the security headquarters?
Sammy, in the past 30 minutes, the police managed to clear the streets, this street that you're seeing, and a parallel street. It seemed for a moment there that they were winning the battle. They managed to pretty much clear the streets from protesters for miles and miles away, to the point that actually the riot police soldiers were able to step down from the car. In the very first time we see this, actually, that they were able to step down from these armored vehicles and walk on the streets and fire as they were walking down. Even it got to the point where they were starting to round up protesters, not on the street, but the parallel street that I can also see from where I'm standing. I was seeing a very intense up-close and personal confrontation between a group of officers and protesters. They were clearly trying to make several arrests there, and people were gathering around us to try to pull away the protesters from being taken into custody. And then I could clearly see and hear it, even although it's across the street from where I am, so a few meters away, but I could still hear the sound of what appears to be either tasers or stun guns used by those riot police soldiers who stepped out from the armored vehicles to obviously try to electrocute the protesters gathering around them to try to stop them from making arrests. So stepping down on the street, tasering the protesters, and ensuing confrontation at the entrance of one of the buildings not far away from here, as the police insist to go after protesters who went up into one of the buildings. So initially it seemed that they managed to clear the street, and then they retreated with the vehicle, Sammy, and a very interesting scene followed. You could see the officers, and what appeared to me as a senior officer, from on top of one of the vehicles. Even though the car was retreating and driving back in the opposite direction because they clearly already cleared the street from protesters, he started gesturing at the protesters and telling them, come, come, a clear sign of trying to provoke them, perhaps. There was a couple of people standing next to me, and they were simply baffled. They were saying they don't understand what the police is doing and why they're trying to clearly provoke protesters into another confrontation. If they've already clearly cleared the streets, why are they gesturing at them to provoke them and entice their anger all over again? Sammy?
Explain to us, if you could, Rawiya. We're seeing on the left hand of our screen live pictures coming in where people seem to be walking quietly, milling about. Are those reinforcements? Are they still trying to take the security headquarters? I mean, is it clear what the goal is of the protesters in Alexandria right now?
Well, actually, they're not walking quietly. This exact stretch is the line separating, the area separating. What I can see behind it is an armored vehicle in front of, or actually more than one armored vehicle in front of the security headquarters, and on the opposite direction, groups of protesters. So this is simply the stretch of the street that's separating between the two. Now, because the camera is positioned in a higher area above the ground, you cannot see the rocks because they're a bit too small for you to see them for where the camera is positioned. But this stretch is essentially, nobody can walk in between because both sides are pelting each other with stones, actually, Sammy.
Is there a feeling at this point that there is a serious divide between political parties and the people on the streets? We keep hearing the political parties talking about the importance of holding these elections on time. We heard only hours before Field Marshal Hussein Tantawi came out and announced the plan to hold presidential elections. We heard from political leaders saying that that is the plan. But people on the streets don't look to me to be too bothered about holding elections. Is that your reading too of the situation?
Absolutely, Sammy. There is no doubt that from the first day these protests began, we started clearly sensing the schism between the protesters and the political party. Sammy, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
As I was saying, from the very first day, you could sense the schism here in Alexandria. The very first march that I attended, as the protesters were advancing through the streets, you could see the protesters staring down the posters of electoral campaigns. And as they were doing that, right next to them were the vehicles.
Sorry, Rawia, I want to jump in here. Can you explain to us what's going on? We're seeing people running once again.
Well, Sammy, it's because the riot police cars are advancing on the scene. They're watching.
We can hear a lot of shooting. Is that tear gas canister? Is it possible for you to make out what the gunshot sounds that we're hearing, what that is exactly?
Oh my God, Sammy, this is very serious. There's a gas station separating the street that you're seeing now, and the street parallel to it, and both streets are scenes of intense confrontations, and this gas station is wedged in between the two confrontations. And one of the tear gas canisters landed exactly on the fence of that gas station. There is an elderly woman standing next to me, and she started screaming, "The gas station, the gas station." The police trucks are clearly advancing once again on the protesters, and the protesters are not holding back, Sammy.
We can in fact see what looks like more tear gas being fired there. There must be great concern for the well-being of civilians. I mean, this is, after all, also a very heavily inhabited neighborhood, is it not?
Sammy, the street is lined on both sides with residential buildings, 13, 14-floor buildings, wall-to-wall buildings, all of them filled with residents, and the tear gas has repeatedly landed in has repeatedly landed in balconies, Sammy, and we've seen one of the balconies almost catch fire this evening, just one of many over the past few days, Sammy.
We can see a bright glow at the back of the screen. Is that in fact the petrol station, and is it on fire? There seems to be something glowing. I'm not sure if you can make out what's going on there, Rawia.
Sammy, I moved away from the live shot, so I don't know what you're seeing in the live shot, but I do not think you're seeing the gas station, because the gas station is not on fire. The tear gas canisters, people immediately ran to it and put it off because they could clearly see the danger of the proximity of that tear gas round to the gas station.
These are incredible pictures coming in. If you're joining us here in Al Jazeera, we're looking at live pictures coming in from Alexandria in Egypt. We're running battles between protesters and the security forces continue. They have been continuing for several hours. Rawia Rageh and our team are live there on the scene. Rawia, I'm not sure if we need to let you take cover at any point. Feel free to break out of this, but we are interested in...
But it's a very important question that you raised earlier about the separation in sentiments and demands between political parties and protesters. As I was saying, as people were tearing down, it was very telling to me. On the one hand, protesters were tearing down election campaigns, and right next to them, campaigning trucks were driving by, carrying posters of party members and basically continuing with the campaign business as usual. It was only one political party that we've heard from that's completely suspending its campaign here in Alexandria, and that is the political party to which the protester Baha'u'ddin al-Sunusi, who was killed on Sunday, belongs to. So his political party immediately saying they are going to be pulling out from the elections. But overall, it is in the interest of the political parties, of course, to go ahead with elections. We very strong remarks on social networking sites and on the streets today, for example, to those political powers or leaders who met with CAF, saying to those leaders who went into that meeting, look at your hands as you're shaking your hands with Field Marshal Hussein Tantawi and try to see the blood of the martyrs on their hands. That was a comment that was repeated on Twitter several times today, just to give you an idea about how this situation is pitting the protesters against the political party, Sammy.
We're hearing a lot of sounds of explosions or shots being fired. Can you make out, Raya, what that is? Is that tear gas canister being fired, or are those some sort of rubber bullets or live ammunition?
We cannot tell if live ammunition is being used, Sammy. I am certainly not seeing any guns from where I'm standing. What I can definitely make out are the tear gas that basically where tear gas from. Yes, that I can confirm. But whether live ammunition is being used, I cannot confirm that. I also cannot see for myself where they're shooting the rubber-coated steel bullets from. But definitely the field hospital is confirming to us that they are getting injuries. Several injuries of being shot with BB gun, basically. And actually the street below, when we were coming up to our live position a few hours ago, from the confrontation yesterday, the street was simply littered, Sammy, with rubber-coated steel bullets. I will not be exaggerating if I was telling you that it was covered with small black pebbles, a bunch of them that are actually in my pocket. Little children and residents of the area were coming up to me and just pouring them in my hand, rounds and rounds of small black pebbles, rubber-coated steel bullets. So there's no doubt that that's being fired here, Sammy.
We've been looking at scenes, Rawiya, in Cairo of largely peaceful protests gathering in Tahrir Square. Why have things turned so violent in Alexandria? Is this reaction to the military's perhaps perceived attempt to impose itself over civilian authority, or is this a lot of bottled up anger at police tactics and security force tactics and alleged abuse?
Well, no doubt, Sammy, that people are fed up with the police and its tactics, fed up with 30 years of police brutality. But look at the street, Sammy, and consider it the Mohammed Mahmoud of Alexandria. Mohammed Mahmoud Street is the street that has been, that's an offshoot of Tahrir Square leading up to the Interior Ministry in Cairo. This is kind of that similar situation here in Alexandria. This is the street leading up to the main police directorate. So it is the main focal point of violence, because it is the biggest symbol of the Ministry of Interior in Alexandria, the largest. This is not a small police station, and we saw firsthand how people, when the marches were advancing through the streets, they were not attacking small police stations, but they were gathering here outside the main police directorate, the main symbol of the Ministry of Interior in the second largest city in the country. This also explains why the police, if you look at it from the perspective of the police, why they have been fighting with such intensity. The top general here, the top police general, saying that this is not only the main symbol of law and order in Alexandria in his own words, but also an important weapons and ammunition depot, and they cannot risk it being taken over or raided by protesters, Sammy.
All right, Rawi, I think we're going to let you take cover and take a little break. We're looking at live pictures coming in from Alexandria in Egypt.